We are back and we're going to continue our investigations into the Mage versus Druid matchup. Language Hacker's with me as he's laughing at my terrible intros. And it's going to be Surrender versus Ryvius. And like I said, it is going to be Mage versus Druid. Slightly different build from Surrender, of course, as most of these Mage players have brought different builds. But let's check out the deck and see what it looks like. Because to me, it looks a little bit weaker to Druid overall, just mainly because of those two Astromancers can really become quite heavy in your hand for most of the game.
Yeah, if you look at every other card in the deck, all of that mana, sure the Sea Giants and Mountain Giants are super expensive, but every other card in the deck can be used a bit more flexibly. The Sea Giants can become a lot cheaper, the Mountain Giants can become cheaper, the Astromancer is stuck at 7 mana, and in matchups like this against Druid, if it gets stuck in your hand, it's just going to sit there like a rock for quite a long time. Surrender is running 2 Frost Novas, which can help a lot in this matchup, especially if you just need time to find something to stick on the board. If you're missing that Sea Giant, you need to swing back. A couple Banana Buffoons, get some extra bananas, but otherwise the list looks pretty normal. Stargazer, Luna, Sandbinder.
Yeah, and the double Frost Nova is quite important here because as we move on throughout this series, we talk a lot about secondary and tertiary decks, and we can check them out in a bit. But just one thing I want to draw your attention to, the only realistic deck he would switch to as anti-aggro is only minus Astromancers and Ziliacs, but then plus 1 Mind Control tech and 2 Polymorph, which definitely don't feel like the best tech cards against Token Druid. So I feel like Surrender with this list with double Astromancer is just stuck.
That's the list.
Is just stuck on it against Ryvius' Druid. But let's check out Ryvius' Druid. You may recognize it from other shows such as the previous match because it is exactly the same as Chonsu's.
Alright, we got the powerful cards there. The key cards, Soul of the Forest, Whispering Woods, cards that are difficult for Mage to deal with. Vargoth can do some crazy stuff. Keeper Steladris. Wardruid Lodi didn't pop up a lot in our last match, but maybe we'll see it this game.
We saw it a couple of days ago though, right?
Right,
You did
yeah.
get some good work done.
In the preliminary matches.
It has 2 roles, I feel, so far that we've seen. It either plays the Emperor Cobra style, where you play it down against a giant, for example, and you're like, well, can't play a giant into this, like, get wrecked.
Yeah.
Or it plays the Tar Creeper role of actually its high health total on the taunt option, defends the rest of your board from like value trades or just positive trades in general.
Yeah.
So I like, we talked about it the other day, but I like Loti in this list. I would struggle to want to not play it, but just because of its pure flexibility.
Definitely, I agree. I like it a lot. It wasn't run that often in early iterations of the deck, but I do like that Ryvius and Chonsu have chosen to bring it this week.
Yeah, and just to give you some background on how the weekend has gone so far, we did mention Flurry has 2-0'd his Druid opponents, and there are only 2 Druids, so Ryvius is currently 0-1, and he has to get a win versus Surrender, whereas Surrender actually took a loss in the Mage Mirror versus Alutimu, which means both of these players yet again 0-1 this weekend, so they'll be even more hungry for that win, because any time you have a week where you've 0-2'd, you've missed out on at least staying afloat, I would say.
Yep.
If you go 1-1, then you're okay because everyone can't 2-0, obviously, right? So if you go 1-1 1 week and maybe even 2 weeks, you're like, okay, I'm just in the middle. I can then get a couple of 2-0s and go upwards. Whereas, the second you start 0-2 and you're just seeing points just fly by every week.
You fall behind, and to be able to get back up to the pack, you need to 2-0, which, I mean, just 2-0 easy, but it can be difficult, right? I mean, you don't want to be able to fall behind and have it just be that much more difficult to get to the playoffs.
Exactly, and as we said, these players are submitting their lists for one set of lists. So this primary deck, a secondary deck, and a tertiary list, that is for both of their opponents every week. So they cannot change it, they cannot alter it.
Right.
So when they build, they have to have a mindset of what do I think this opponent's going to bring, and then also what do I think this opponent's going to bring. And we haven't seen too many players, I would say, be super successful with the double read to be favored in like both matchups, outside of just a couple of players. So being able to 2-0 every week is so difficult that it's unlikely it's going to happen. But let's just get into game number 1. Enough chat from us about non-game play. Let's get into what everyone really wants to see. It's going to be this Mage versus Druid once again. Dreamway Guardians kept for Ryvius just as a very powerful, just 2-drop to play. Surrender still making his decisions though. What do you make about this mulligan and what do you go for?
Yeah, well, from Ryvius, I do like him keeping the Dreamway Guardians. For Surrender, we've seen some other players in this exact same position toss the Mountain Giant on coin, thinking it's too slow. I think it's too risky to keep. Khadgar plus images can be very, very, I want to say cute, but in a good way, because if you end up finding the giant, suddenly you can just get it down a giant in turn 3 or 4
Right.
if your opponent starts to go wide very early. He could also be considering holding the Ray of Frost. We've seen it be very useful in combination with stuff like Mana Cyclone and Evocation just early on to kill something and get some extra gas. But it looks like Surrender kept only the Ray of Frost, I believe.
Yes, yeah. And the Acorn Baron now, really good opening, pretty much the one drop you want because it's the
especially
only
going
one
first.
drop in the deck.
Yeah, especially going first because it means as the mage you don't really want to coin out a ping, so it's just going to push some damage.
It's definitely the deckhand effect,
right?
Right, of like, well, I get 2 damage and there's a lot of damage permanence in mage right now, so it's like, well, this 2 damage is just 2 damage for the rest of the game. It's 2 less I have to get to. And when you look at how powerful some of these Savage Roars is, the second you get to your opponent like 20, depending on your board size, you can just kill them.
Enough,
you can just kill them. So all this extra little damage early on is actually equates to a lot more in the long run.
I'm excited for Surrender's hand. We have the Apprentice, the Mana Cyclone. Obviously, there's not that many spells, but even just going something like Apprentice, Coin, Double Ray of Frost, Mana Cyclone can get you on the board. I mean, I think Surrender's one cheap spell away from just making a great swing turn.
But as I mentioned earlier, though, there is that Astromancer in hand, and Surrender's running 2 off in his primary deck, which is pretty much his deck he's going to be running against this Druid. So, you know, as I said, it can just be locked into your hand for so long.
So, Ryvius, knowing Surrender's list, knows that there is no Rabble Bouncer, so I would like him to just set up for the Solar Forest, go exactly Squirrel, Henchclan, Hogsteed.
Yeah, you're not playing around Sea Giant, right? You can play around an early Rabble Bouncer, but you're not playing around Sea Giant.
I mean, Sea Giant can't even come down for a couple turns anyways.
That's what I mean. The early Rabble Bouncer is a problem. A Sea Giant later on is less of a problem. So yeah, I really like this. Just go for it. You have all the cards in the world here to pile the pressure on, mainly with that Soul of the Forest, and even the sort of quasi like double removal of Wrath and Swipe. You can take down like one annoying minion that's in the way.
Yeah, definitely. Surrender deciding if it's enough to go in with just the coin and the 2 copies of Ray of Frost, the initial twin spell and the second half of it, or if he wants to take the turn a bit slowly, Arcane Intellect, or even just play at the Stargazer Luna and try to clean up some of the board before buff comes down. The problem with that is if there is a buff, the Luna gets traded away pretty efficiently. 2 bumps from the Dryads could do it.
It's so difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I naturally would want to just go Luna, because I think if you go wide here, I say wide, you go off with the spells, right? But then you're on 4 mana next turn. Does 4 mana do anything with those spells? The spells would have to be insane.
I kind of like the Arcane Intellect here.
Yeah, I like this more than going off.
I mean, you're just 1 good spell away from... Oh, Ryvius caught a fly. You're just 1 good spell away from being able to go off with the Apprentice and Cyclone. So I think drawing towards that is good. Perfect.
Oh, look at that. Yeah. It's a lot better for Surrender now.
So Ryvius could be a bit greedy here and go Squirrel Dreamwave Guardians and just set up for an even bigger Soul of the Forest, but I think it's just fine to get it out of the way now.
So what's the punish actually for going Dreamwave Guardian Squirrel?
Yeah, you fill up your board, you're at 7 at that point. A Sea Giant could come down with something like a Mirror Image. I don't know if you care too much about that. The thing is, you don't have something like a Roar or any buff card for that matter, so if you do go wide, you're not actually threatening anything. So kind of just like getting the Solar Force out there now, if some crazy Cyclone turn happens, it's much more difficult to clear. But I guess if you have more minions on the board, then it's harder to freeze all of them.
Yeah, my worry is if you go Solar Forest and you have other options, the attack is so low right now that Surrender doesn't have to worry about it. He doesn't have to kill the minions.
Sure.
So, and only the power of Soul of the Forest is you put enough pressure on that your opponent has to clear, and then they have to clear again because of Death Rattle. But I think with this low power on board, Surrender's like, cool, they've got a cool Death Rattle that I'm never going to proc.
Sure.
I enjoy. So I actually think I like going wide and just be a bit riskier, you know, just really get aggressive and say, there aren't really any cards in the deck that clear this board, and then I'll Soul the Forest. And
even with a Giant coming down, if you don't have buffs, you can Soul the Forest and just trade into it. So I actually agree.
Which actually buffs your board in a roundabout way anyway, right?
Trading 1/1s for 2/2s.
And here we go. Surrender's going to start doing the thing.
So I think Surrender can choose between freezing 4 different minions or killing 2. Or I guess killing 1 and freezing 2 other minions. I'm curious what he's going to go for here. I would like to see just 2 minions killed off. A roar by itself won't deliver lethal damage here. So just simplifying the board before buffs happen, I think is better than freezing 4. And it looks like Surrender agrees. Mana Cyclone. Okay, Magic Trick. Thunderstorm's not bad. Arcane Explosion. Ooh, you can even play that this turn to get rid of the first half of the Hogseed and both Acorn Bears. I like this a lot. Yeah. I just like playing it too.
Yeah, just do it. You have Blizzard coming up soon as well. Like you've got Ice Barrier to buy some time. You got Vaporize just to buy a
coming in just too late.
Time.
I mean, don't get me wrong. The buffs. Well, I mean, it'll help you clean up the board here, but
yeah, one turn quicker.
Yeah, and it could have been a lot more difficult for Surrender to clean up the board, right? If those were 2/3s instead of 1/2s,
yeah.
Suddenly you have to use those Ray of Frost to just freeze instead of clearing, and then you have the board left over.
It's like Ray of Floss. That'd be a weird move.
Twin spell.
Twice a day.
Exactly.
There you go.
Indeed.
I think I want to say you have to. I think you have to play Blessing. You get another one back anyway. The minions don't get rid, because now suddenly you can be. Look at the amount of spells that Surrender has that have generated.
Right.
Arcane Missile, Cinderstorm. To be honest, if you don't even ping, it's like it's the job done, right?
Like, I think you do have to Blessing the Ancients here. You can use Wrath to clean up the Apprentice, but I think everything else should just go face.
I agree with this turn, because otherwise, anything Surrender does kills your board.
Yeah.
Which you just
a light breeze would kill your board. Blizzard not playable just yet. Oh, there's the second Astromancer. So now there's 2 dead cards. I mean, the funny thing is, if Ryvius doesn't have a board by turn 7, sure, the Astromancer can come down. But the important thing about these is that they're doing absolutely nothing for Surrender right now, and he needs something now to deal with the threats that Ryvius was presenting. What to do indeed. So the Mana Cyclone on board can kill off one of the Triads, but there's 2 minions left over. So Surrender has to figure out how he wants to kind of dance around this. Banana Buffoon puts another minion on board. Your hand is full, so you only get 1 banana, however. 2, 4, 6, 8, yeah. I'm thinking, what if you just want to play Vaporize to get rid of a minion that way? Entity doesn't help you too much, because Ryvius isn't going to develop that many minions. Yeah. Most of it is summons. Summons as opposed to played. Barrier's not bad either, buys you some health, but I don't think you're at risk of dying if you just go Vaporize.
Yeah, and like...
Ooh, I actually like the Cyclone instead of... Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. And Vaporize does, I think, a better job than Barrier of saving you health. Because it kills a minion, whereas Barrier just, okay, it takes the damage regardless. And it, also Barrier can be just good later on as well to just push yourself out of Savage Roar range.
Right.
He's never going to die this turn, right? I don't even know if there's anything that could actually kill him this turn. There isn't.
Not with Vaporize.
Yeah, exactly.
What to do?
Ryvius is in a tough spot. From his perspective, Surrender's at 15. Not the craziest amount of health. And you do have the Forest Aid in a couple turns as refill. The problem is you have to bridge that gap. Using Blessing the Ancients here to just buff these out of range of the Cyclone trading in is possible, but not super great. You could Soul the Forest to just have a bit more durability, and that plays around Vaporize a little bit by giving you a second half of, I guess under the initial body you get another one. Could also be thinking about the what would happen if this was Counterspell, the ramifications. Preemptively punching the Cyclone and then Blessing the Ancients. Okay. Just trying to push a bit more damage this way.
Yeah, it's just like an unfun turn, as far as I'm concerned.
Correct sequencing though. Swinging in the Murloc first, allowing the Dryad to stay alive and heal a bit.
And this is where the Forest Aid might not be the end of the world here.
Agreed. It, unfortunately, it will come down after Surrender plays something like an Astromancer. If there's nothing else developed from Ryvius this turn, on his turn 7, I definitely expect Surrender to just jam an Astromancer. With a Sandbinder pickup that's guaranteed to give you a Mountain Giant, because both Cyclones have been played.
What to do? What to do?
What to do?
So you can play this Mountain Giant, right?
No, it's 2 mana.
No, what am I doing? Yeah, I thought you had 3.
Sorry, you have 2 mana left over.
Yeah,
the
I
Giants
can't count. It's fine.
That's
Neither of
okay.
us can count. It's
No
okay.
worries. Snap Freeze doesn't do a whole lot. You can't freeze something for a turn, obviously, but
I think it's just going to be used or good for either post-Blizzard or, most importantly, breaking those Savage Roar kill turns and just saying, oh, actually, -1 minion. Go.
I like this a lot from Surrender. Sandbinder's not going to do too much on board. And developing the S-Bearer now, just spending the mana to be defensive is pretty good.
Well, Surrender can get a pretty good read into what's in hand here.
Yeah, Surrender can probably read pretty much exactly Force Aid plus some other stuff. Swipes could be in hand, potentially. There hasn't been great opportunities to swipe.
Wrath.
Right.
But then outside of that, Power of the Wild would have been played, surely.
Earlier.
Any other minions would have been played.
I
What
think Ryvius might have to just swipe face here and spend the mana. He could hold it, and that might have Surrender play around some extra stuff, like maybe some extra buff cards. Having 2 swipes means Ryvius is able to deal with the Giant if it comes down, but I'm not even sure if you want to be doing that when you're at 31 health. You probably just want to develop the Force Aid and try to find a way to close out the game.
My calculations are flawed.
9 mana's pretty decent.
Oh,
Jurassic
okay. Force Aid, Snap Blade, there's nothing else to do. I don't, as you said, with the amount of health that's available, I don't think Ryvius can afford to just not do this and not at least try and set up a threat of lethal.
Yep. Blizzard's probably going to come out here.
Why not? Blizzard go face, set up lethal.
Sets up lethal. Can Mirror Image first.
Sure.
Get some cards out of hand. Let's use the Banana Buffoons a bit better. And it just sets up for like a defensive play if for some reason Ryvius is able to clear the crush. Also, double swipe would clear the images as well. Double swipe's going to have to come out to keep Ryvius alive. It'll be difficult for him to come back, however, because the Astromancer's just going to push 5, and then the turn after another 5 push with a ping will finish off Ryvius. So even with double swipe here, I don't think there's anything that keeps Ryvius. Actually, he is running Mark of the Loa, so he could taunt something up next turn.
It's just really funny that I think Surrender could have nearly killed him just with bananas.
Yeah.
As well, right? He's at what, 1 mana
Pretty
off?
close.
He'd have to banana. Oh no, he needs 2 mana to ping.
Hand size is a problem too, but yeah.
I think he just goes again, right? I think playing the
Giant's fine. I think I like the Giant a bit over the Astromancer because you can fit in some extra stuff.
Calculations are flawed.
it's just an extra minion, though, right? Ah, the
Ryvius,
Hyreek the Bat.
he saw Hyreek the
providing
Bat, and
lethal.
he's just like, I can't deal with Hyreek.
Yeah, that's there. Just one too many. And Surrender takes the first game there over Ryvius. So, why can't Druid win? It kind of can, but most of the time it doesn't.
On paper, we're thinking that it's aggressive enough to get through the Mage, but the Mage is, I don't know, the game plan just seems to be working out. I mean, we didn't even see that many Frost Nova. Like, Frost Nova didn't even come up that game, right? That's one of the tools that we see the Mages use a lot, but...
Absolutely huge here for Surrender. He's going at 1-0 up versus Druid. Can he make it a 2-0 and get a win on the board this weekend? We're going to find out after this.
Each teammate I'm calling has stories. This tale's about riches and glories. Deep down in the earth, a king dreams of rebirth and refilling his gold inventories. Such a shame to have lost all that treasure. Join up, be a kobold of leisure. The cards now be calling. Someone new, no more stalling. And we next will be taking her measure.
We've got Surrender versus Ryvius continuing here. Surrender taking the game number 1 with his mage, and is mage going to do it again? And then this druid, I believe, will be, what, 1 and 3 this weekend?
I don't think Druid won, did it? I was pretty sure Druid wasn't able to get a win.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because Flurry can't be stopped.
Yeah, no,
Let's
Druid has not found a win
I
yet.
completely messed up the score, yeah. Anyway, let's go to Surrender's deck list. I was confused. I thought you said you didn't say with enough authority that I didn't just automatically believe you, so I got confused for a
I
second.
thought you were tricking me. I wanted to double check.
I don't trick people.
Well, Surrender
nice. Anyway,
has-
let's go into this. He did move to his tertiary deck.
He did, yes. So he switched to his Mind Control 2 Polymorphs and removed the 2 Astromancers and the Ziliacs. So the Polymorphs won't help too much. There are some cases where it can be useful. The Mind Control tech is probably the card he really wanted, but the Astromancers are kind of a little heavy and came down. Obviously, they helped to win last game, but they came down a little bit too late. And the Polymorphs at least help Surrender deal with something a bit earlier.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Because it definitely, you know, if I just gave Surrender a quick call and was like, what cards do you want to attack him versus Druid?
Right.
You wouldn't have picked these cards, you know,
True.
I'm almost certain. But it's just a little bit better. Those Astromancers, although were good in that specific game, they are not actually cards
They're
you want
not
in the
always,
deck
yeah.
prep. So he did get rid of those in the Ziliacs. So even though he's got rid of some cards that were useful, even the Polymorphs will probably, on average, get more use than an Astromancer in hand. At
They're
least
just
you
more
could do
flexible.
something.
Yeah.
Even Polymorph, in a way, a Death Rattle, you know, Soul the Forest minion,
Yep.
is valuable in one way or another. Let's check out Ryvius' list. He's moved over to his secondary deck. No true surprise there. It's the double Fairy Dragon and a Henchclan Hogsteed to round out the more aggressive options. Early game, Mark of the Lower number 1 is gone, and then Forest Aids 2 of it's gone as well. And I'll just sort of echo what I said the other day about this list. My only query is, could you actually, I'd love to hear what they thought about just -1 Mark of the Lower anyway, and either put in that second Hogsteed or add a Fairy Dragon regardless. Like, does the Mark of the Lower ×2 actually provide more value than one of these anyway? I don't know, maybe.
It's possible that Ryvius and Chauncey were expecting some more aggressive decks as well, trying to target mage, and in that case the Hogsteed helps, and the Mark of the Lower can help as well, make a tall minion that's difficult for other aggro decks to punch through. That might be what they were thinking. I mean, I believe they've hit a mage in almost every single case so far, so some of these aggressive tech options not quite paying off, but the secondary list with the Fairy Dragons are definitely going to be a bit more appropriate for this mage.
Yeah, and it's you know, Ryvius has to get some work done here. As we said, Druid was the bring for these two players here, Ryvius and obviously Chonsu. but he needs to get something done because it must shake you a little bit as a player when you and someone else that you practice with have brought the same deck that counters or should counter a deck you've expected. You both hit it and then just lose, both of you.
It's got to be frustrating. I mean,
it's gonna feel bad.
Maybe this isn't the way to beat Mage. Maybe we should be going more of a bomb warrior route. You know, like we've been seeing Tyler and other players bring.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you were asking me right here, right now, what I would queue into what I thought was a mage field, it would just be Bomb Warrior, to be completely honest, because I feel like overall it just has the most consistent game plan that we've seen. But let's go into game number 2, Surrender. Only one game away from taking this series and getting a point on the board this weekend on the mage, and Ryvius, of course, on the druid.
Ryvius kept blessing the ancients in his mulligan here. Surrender is deciding what he wants to keep. Doesn't even keep the magic trick. Some players keep that to just play it on one, try to find something else, but Surrender's saying there's other cards in my deck that I want, let me just try to find those instead of discovering something else.
Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of the magic trick keep, to be honest. I would rather draw a different card.
Right.
Because that's the way I view it. What do I want, a random spell or a different card from my deck?
Oh, keep your Steladris.
Again. Coin Fairy Dragon, let's go.
I would like to see a coin 2 here from Ryvius. Be aggressive early. Only because you have the Fairy Dragon drawn as well, so now you have...
Right, coin
have
2 into 2, yeah. And then you even have the buff on 3.
Yeah. I like it a lot. I think he's considering which one to play out first, maybe, if he is.
Oh, I think he's considering coin Vargoth. If I ever consider it.
No.
You know, like play one turn slower to be able to coin Vargoth on 3? I don't know.
Probably not. I think that's not quite the way you want it. It's a very powerful game plan, but I think you need to be a bit more aggressive than that.
Again, I think every time we've seen Fairy Dragon swap to, it's got work done. It's always been an early game, and it just stacks up. I think like 6 damage minimum every game.
Surrender's hand is rounding out quite nicely. The Mirror Image with the Evocation weren't doing too much, but now with the Mana Cyclone drawn, perhaps not this turn, but in the future...
I wonder if it is worth it this turn.
Just to deal with the Fairy Dragon?
Yeah, I mean, you drop a 2/2 that contests a Fairy Dragon, which you cannot kill. You get the taunts that defend the 2/2, and you get 2 spells, and you're going into Luna on curve anyway.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, I like it.
Now that you've talked me through it, I do like this quite a bit, and it also lets you creep out into Stargaze Luna,
yeah, exactly.
which continues your tempo game plan.
And in worst case, you've got Polymorph for 4. You know, it's not the best plan in the world, but I think it's the strongest plan Surrender has access to.
With this Scorch picked up with the Mana Cyclone, I think Surrender might even opt for Scorching instead of playing the Stargaze Luna.
Oh yeah, just do it. I like it.
It's hard though, because it's hard to squeeze in the Luna on other turns. I guess you could play it on 4. The problem is the Scorch is much more difficult to weave in when it's 4 mana.
And also, the second power of the wild comes out next turn.
Right.
You're in trouble. Or you trade the 2/2 and no, because if you want to play Luna, you can't. Yeah, I think you Scorch. Scorch, take the ping and just go. And just deal with it, you know.
So I'm just trying to plan out the next couple turns. All right, what is Ryvius doing next turn? Do I want to Stargaze Luna on the board to be able to fight against that? But I think cleaning up the Steladris is just the safe way to go.
Yeah, one thing you should be able to beat the Druid on is value.
Yep.
So don't let them get more value to maybe be able to match you.
Also just limit their options. I mean, if there is a Power of the Wild, for example, we can see obviously that there isn't, but if there was a Power of the Wild in Ryvius' hand and you let it go off, suddenly the Ryvius guaranteed has something to do, right? Whereas now if there was just a Power of the Wild, okay, well, you can summon a Panther and then what?
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's just a problem. And now, not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad for this, you know, not this turn necessarily, of course, for the landscaping, but it's a cheap enough minion that causes a problem no matter which turn of the game you're on. It's not like it's only good on 2 or 1.
Ooh, interesting here. My first instinct was to play Stargaze Luna if I were in Surrender's position. But you could also consider playing Counterspell. It's unlikely Ryvius would just jam out Soul of the Forest on 4, but it's just some sort of disruption that you could throw out.
Funny enough, outside of what?
Double buff.
That and also outside of Wrath. There's
Swipe.
nothing you really want to throw away as Ryvius.
Oh,
right?
you mean to
Yeah, sorry. There's
right,
nothing you really want to test Counterspell with.
Right.
I'll just test Counterspell with one of the best cards in my deck. Like, seems good.
Yeah.
So we know it is Counterspell, but even from Ryvius's mindset, he has to test it with something. And I don't want to test it with any of those cards
That's
if
the
I'm
thing.
Ryvius.
You can't test that. As soon as you're doing something to proc
Right.
it, you're committing at that
It's
point
like
because
Rat
all your
is the
spells are so
best.
expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. I also do just like Vargoth, but now he's got to think of its entity.
What if it's Entity? The thing is, there's not that many cards that Surrender could use in combination with Vargoth. Arcane Intellect is one of the main ones. Mirror Image, but you've seen one
Conjurer's
already.
Calling would just be funny.
That'd be very scary. It could work, but it would be scary. I mean, you would just Conjurer's Calling the Vargoth at that point. Yeah.
Right. Also with the thing here as well, that because of this Hench Clan pickup, this turn looks... The choice now isn't between spell Vargoth or a 2-drop and hero power.
Yeah.
It's double 2-drop, which I do like quite a lot.
He plays the Fairy Dragon first in case it's Mirror Entity.
Oh,
And if
very
it were
interesting.
Mirror Entity, he could play the Hogsteed to kill off the Fairy Dragon that gets developed. Otherwise, two things have to hit the Hogsteed if that was Entitied.
Also really funny, I would have just naturally dropped Hogsteed, but he knows Surrender has one mind control tech in his deck.
It's true,
Because I don't see the value of hero power in this turn.
right? He's holding back a little bit.
You know, other than to play around.
Mirror Image, a good pickup for the Luna. The Luna's protected with the counterspell. Swipe's not going to get through this. Wrath's not going to get through this. Fortunately for Ryvius, he does have the Hogsteed, so he can punch through the Mirror Images and kill off the Luna this turn. Conjurer's Callings and Surrender's Hand. Powerful cards, they don't do much in this situation though. Blessing the Ancients could come out here. If it is counterspelled though, and Ryvius is wincing a little bit, this is a big deal. It means that two things have to now hit into the Luna to kill it, which means you're simplifying your board, like it's getting traded off, but also when a twin spell is counterspelled, you do not get the second half of the twin spell. So Ryvius loses both charges, so to speak, of that Blessing of the Ancients.
Yeah, and you know, rough turn for Ryvius, but Surrender's hit that awkward point with Mage sometimes, where you have a Mountain Giant and you have Conjurers, but you don't have the cards to be able to play both. And if you can't play both, you either play other stuff, which, you know, Surrender doesn't really have double polymorph, you know, or do you just try and pass each turn to get to the Mountain Giant Conjurers? It's very difficult to manage, and now Surrender's probably very happy as these polymorphs in hand.
Again, Ryvius, well, I think you're just going to jam a Giant. You could have polymorphed last turn to get 1 damage off the board, but...
You don't want to polymorph of Vargoth?
I want to play a Giant. Sure, I do want to polymorph a Vargoth, but like we've been talking about, you need to do some sort of...
If he doesn't poly the Vargoth, look at the turn next.
That's fine.
Double Soul of the Forest.
Right, but how much damage are you really pushing? And then the Conjurer's Calling payoff and the Giant is huge with the Ray of Frost as well. I think we've been talking about this a lot lately. You need to take some sort of aggressive stance at Mage. You can't just be playing defense the whole time. You don't have the tools to play like old school Freeze Mage. You can definitely delay the game, but
if you play a Giant, it's dead. Is my problem as well.
If you don't play a Giant,
like, you remove Vargoth as a threat, and then you just play a Giant with a Ray of Frost next turn.
Okay.
Because the problem is you can't Conjurer's Call the Giant if Ryvius can just say, okay, hero power, tank 8, which he can easily do, and it dies. And then Surrender is in every world of trouble because he doesn't have anything in hand. I think the combination of that minion being Vargoth and the Giant already being dead if he so chooses means that you should go for the polymorph. Oh! Did you see him? He nearly went. He nearly went for it. Oh. I think this is the right move. Because even you take out the double Soul of the Forest that would happen, and especially with this draw, it would have been nuts. But even remove the spells, the Giant dies, and then you follow up as a whole lot of nothing.
Fair. Ryvius has been playing around Mind Control Tech the whole game, and now he has to decide if he wants to play out the Ethereal Lackey and finally play into
I think the Lackey Soul's fine.
Yep. He's opting not to. He's opting to push some extra damage this turn.
Okay.
Which means the second half of the Blessing of the Ancients next turn puts his board up to lethal range.
Oh, okay, that makes way more sense then. Interesting, okay. Generally, if you're against Mind Control Tech, you want to not have 4 minions. You want to either have 7. Yeah, or 3. Or less, you know, potentially. But yeah, exactly. So, you know, I do understand not going exactly to 4, but setting up lethal is also, you know, overrides everything in my book.
Now Surrender's going for the play you talked about, Mountain Giant.
Look at it,
freeze the
Fairy Dragon.
Yeah,
it's just jamming face.
Roar would be lethal for Ryvius if he draws it. There it is.
Oh, okay. Ryvius fights back.
Yeah, Blessing the Ancients, even just Roar Hero Power would have done it. Ryvius gets on the board and ties up the series, 1-1.
Even though that was a little bit close.
It was a bit of a nail biter. I think if he did not find lethal this turn, Surrender might have been able to stabilize with the 3 Conjures Callings.
Yep. And what you got to bear in mind as well is Surrender had a whole lot of nothing for that mid game.
Yeah.
And also double Fairy Dragon was a problem. With Surrender just going for that, the early Cyclone looked good, even with the Scorch.
Yeah.
But again, it wasn't good enough because there was double Conjurer's Calling and 1 Mountain Giant, and it just wasn't adding up. But Ryvius gets a win on the board with this Druid, and he's only 1 more game away from proving Druid can do it, and it should be favoured at least in this major matchup. We'll be right back with the next game.
Dalaran will be ours! Once we land, you know what to do! No we don't. You didn't tell us to play it. I didn't think I had to. It's perfectly obvious. Bank! I am to be robbing the bank! I take henchmen for vault smashing and shiny stealing! Plan is obvious! It's a start, yes, but...
You won't get a single coin unless you take care of the city's guards. Let's rip open Violet Hole and unleash the prisoners on the city. That'll keep the guards busy.
Certainly, but that's not...
No! First, we must sow chaos in the streets.
I got rockets. Anyone need rockets? Try to see the big picture. Shiny, shiny, shiny.
We have to break their will before we can loot, you fools!
Please, everyone, please. Let's drop some rockets to the city. Oh, big candle. And then we just take the whole shebang wherever we want. Yes! Finally, you're exactly right.
Seriously?
That's dumb.
Weak candle. Just wait till second gear kicks in. It's just like I said. We're going to take Dalaran for all that it's got. It's a genius plan. It's simple. It should have been obvious. And absolutely nothing will go wrong.
So, genius, how do we land?
One night, I was called on to scry. But what is this symbol I spy? It's my own crystal ball. Yes, I'll answer the call. And the others will come by and by. That's right. We be calling a team in. The masters of plotting and scheming. By this candle a-glowing, I surely be knowing whose gold will be once more a-gleaming.
Druid versus Mage. Can Ryvius on the Druid get it done, or is Surrender on the Mage going to put the win on his scoreboard? We're going to find out very quickly, as the players should be ready to go into the game right now. But what are you feeling here, Language Hacker? We've seen a lot of Mage beat up on Druid this weekend, even though it shouldn't, I'll say. But what are you feeling that, the more we see the matchup, the more we see these players play it out? What's your take?
I mean, the more I'm seeing the matchup, the more I feel like it's closer than it seems. And I think it might even be possible that a Druid might be drawing dead a bit more often, just not in the sense that they don't have cards to play, but they draw like the wrong half of the deck. Sometimes they have all buffs, sometimes they have all minions, and they need like a perfect mix to be able to get that super aggressive starts that we see them, I guess, prepare for against this matchup.
Here we go, Ryvius.
Oh boy.
Speaking of wrong parts of the deck, the old quad 4 drop in your token deck.
Yeah, he takes off his glasses and he's like, oh,
took his glasses
boy.
and he's like, well, yep. I shouldn't be laughing because obviously he's not happy about this, and I'm not laughing at him, but I'm laughing at. We've all been there. We've all had this opening hand that has just sucked, to be completely honest. And Ryvius has to work out how he's going to make this work. One thing he needs to bear in mind though is Mage can also have bad opening hands, right?
Right.
It's not a deck that has a super consistent opening, and Surrender's probably just confused.
Yeah, usually on one, if you have Acorn Barrier, you just play it.
Ryvius also needs to be slightly careful that when you actually leave the rope to burn, your next turn auto ropes, right?
Yeah, it starts.
So
you have less time.
You probably should, just for the effort, to press that end turn button. It's a small thing, and it's probably not going to make even a small difference at all. But he does have to make sure he does something next
Just be
turn.
wary of it. Yeah.
Because when for want of just pressing the button, I think it's worth. And Surrender looks like he's potentially repaying the favor.
He's just mapping out the next few turns.
He's definitely doing this because Ryvius just roped him.
Perhaps, yeah.
100%. Oh no, he's actually decided on this play. Okay, I actually thought he was going to pass.
I like this a lot. Playing into something like Jimmy Guardians, like playing into Ryvius' turn 2.
That's a good spot.
That's not a bad one.
Ryvius, the 4-drop king right now. If we were playing a different card game, he would have a very good hand.
That's true. The Shooting Star is going to help a lot. I kind of like Surrender's Coin Mana Cyclone because if Ryvius had something like Jimmy Guardians, the Cyclone would immediately just start cleaning it up.
Yeah. And this Shooting Star as well is so sick.
Yeah. I would like to see an Apprentice from Surrender come down here.
Oh yeah, just go.
No, yeah, literally just go, because Ryvius clearly has a bit of a slower hand. So if you can take advantage of that and just preemptively get the Apprentice, it means that you can play, obviously you can play spells for cheaper and get value of that second cycle much quicker. And even if you don't have more spells to use with it, you can just start being the aggressor.
I think you play the mirror images as well, right?
No.
Do you not put your opponent on Savage Draw?
If your opponent Savage Draws you, I'm pretty happy with that.
Really? Okay. Yeah. I think it's for want of a mirror image, you can Savage Draw. You can defend your Apprentice.
Ryvius kind of has the hero power set up for Whispering Woods. The Keeper Steladris, while it does contest the Mana Cyclone, you don't want the Mage to be able to just clear Steladris for free.
Jeez. The one good thing is, yes, there's a Shooting Star there. Yeah, we know. But Whispering Woods is one of the best cards in the matchup.
That's why we run Shooting Star.
Because Mage can't really deal with that many 1/1s, right? Or that many separate minions.
Yeah, the Mage just doesn't run AoE.
Play it. He wants Surrender to ping.
Yeah, I think this is fine. It makes sense, actually. The more I think about it, you want to be able to deal with the Cyclone, but you also want to set up for...
Yeah, I mean, there are no real cards that Slandris is going to get value from right now, right? Just jam the Whispering Woods. Now Ryvius can get his plan out. Surrender's like bit of a breath. Let's go. See what happens.
Apprentice Shooting Star to clean up 3 of them. Ryvius already knows what's about to happen. Yeah, he's like, oh.
At least he's smiling. I would feel bad laughing if he seemed like very
crushed,
upset.
yeah.
But at least he's smiling and kind of laughing instead of crying. So I don't feel as bad anymore, which is good. Swipe though, you know. It's not bad. Like it's definitely not.
It deals with a lot, especially with the Acorn board
yeah.
to round out your mana here.
Yeah. It's not over yet.
Exactly. Ryvius is not out of it just yet.
Imagine after this opening, Ryvius just wins. That'd be mind-blowing, wouldn't it? That's what I'm saying. Like, Surrender's got a decent opening, of course, and I liked his playstyle throughout the first few turns, but Mage doesn't always have good stuff every turn. They have a lot of dead turns that they have to make work or buy time to do the better turns later on.
I like Polymorph a lot here. Just Ryvius has 4 cards in hand. You can kind of put him on some removal, maybe some buff cards, and if you just remove the option of having extra minions to buff, I think that's quite powerful. Alternatively, Surrender has the option to go Sandbinder this turn, or even develop a secret and ping, but I think removing the squirrels is nice.
I definitely see your point, but I think I like the Sandbinder, because if you don't expect more than 1 health buff, then it starts trading pretty well, and also it keeps your hand size as high as possible, which means this giant is more and more likely to come out at a reasonable time.
The Sandbinder is the last card I played this turn, behind Frost Nova.
I mean, Surrender did it, so it must be right.
Okay, that's good enough for me.
It's fine. But yeah, I just think... Oh, Oh yeah, and it was all excuse me. Suddenly choked to death.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine. It was always guaranteed the giant because the double cyclone was in there, the only 4 elementals in the deck. I just think I like the shape of this Sandbinder to be on the board right now. Because this is what potentially worst case scenario this turn, and it still kills off the Acorn Bearer and
True.
still lives. And this giant's playable.
Fair. I would have just liked, based on what you saw Ryvius had in his hand early on, you can put on some very specific cards. You might not know the exact card, but there's a range of cards that you can say, like, okay, he probably has something like this because they wasn't really playable. He just hero power passed for quite a few turns. I think with that in mind, there's not that many cards Ryvius has to develop onto the board. And if that's the case, I want to, from Surrender's point, I want to be able to deny Ryvius the option to develop anything. And if you polymorph, you can still play a Mountain Giant this turn, because it would have cost 6. Instead of drawing a card, you would have taken one out from your hand, you draw an extra one this turn, and then you get up to 6.
Oh, can still play a giant.
Yep.
I think with 2 giants especially, getting one down, if it gets double traded by the 4/3s, great.
Yep.
It's giant with taunt. Seems good.
Okay, with the elementalification, Surrender's able to play out. This is kind of weird because he could have played the giant without drawing because he didn't have the elementalification at the time. So if you played Arcane Intellect and didn't hit the evocation, suddenly you don't have much else to do.
Very small thing, but he played the giant that he didn't draw from Sandbinder. So Ryvius will know
that there's another
that it was 2 giants in hand now.
Slight misstep there from Surrender, I think. Sometimes you have the option of concealing information at the cost of something else, like playing a second Conjurer's Calling with a twin spell. But I think in this case, it's just a matter of which one you want to play.
Yeah. So there is Landscaping plus Swipe, which has a double effect of buffing, and you can just get the clear off. Yep. You don't have to sorry. Yeah, that's right, yeah. So you can get the extra minions and stay wide on the board, and then you can follow it with Soul of the Forest. There's Savage Roar as well. Wait, did I just miss lethal?
It's not lethal. Right? No, it's not lethal, but it sets up for Swipe to be lethal next turn, I believe. So you're pushing an extra 9 now, and Swipe hero power next turn would be lethal.
Ooh, big ask for Surrender now. And also remember, Ryvius has 2 cards in hand he hasn't played all game that he had from turn 1. And this play lets Surrender potentially create massive taunts. Surrender has to know Ryvius has a swipe.
Right.
He has
Surrender has pretty much the read that there's a swipe in Ryvius' hand. So he has to figure out, how do I deal with this board and set up to play around the swipe. There is nothing in his hand that stops Swipe hero power from lethaling him, so I think Surrender has to go for some sort of bluff line where he plays a secret in hopes that Ryvius just doesn't go for it.
Right. The problem here is as well,
you can't quick.
Oh, Ryvius can't do his safe test for guaranteed, right?
Right. You don't. You can't
he has
go
to
spell
landscape in swipe unless he draws a Wrath. So let's see. So we know 100% of the time Surrender's dead. In terms of correct, if both players play correct,
optimally,
then you know Surrender's dead. But he might be able to buy some time, and then at least you let your opponent make a call as opposed to you making a call, right? So let's see what happens. I think he has to play secret.
I think he's just saying, I hope you don't actually have the swipe.
Doing his best, but now Ryvius, with one of the worst Druid openings we've ever seen, is going to get the win off the back of that. A nice heads-up play of saying, well, I've got this swipe. I'm just going to set this up. There's nothing you can do about it. Surrender. Looking disappointed, of course. Ryvius thanking anyone who will listen right now, because that was rough. And the most hilarious thing to me was that's the worst opening I've ever seen from a Druid this weekend. And it was the one that Ryvius won.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
It's kind of crazy.
We've seen Druids have way better hands than that and then lose.
There's definitely a heads-up play by Ryvius going for the Roar, just cashing on the damage, saying, I don't know how much longer I can get through with this damage. Maybe Frost Novas are going to come out, so let's... He just went
I
for
like
the
it.
roar, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely like it, because at the moment, I keep mentioning it, but Mage doesn't really heal. There's nothing to do, so if you set him up on that, there has to be very specific things to go. Obviously, there could have been taunts, for example, which would have stopped the hero power being down, but even then, it's going to be very difficult to hold off. So congratulations to Ryvius. He does take the win with the Druid, proving it can get the job done. But coming up next, we've got Tom at 60229 versus Staz as the final match of the day. Good, don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back.